the message that I want to take forward and to everybody beyond my time is to never doubt yourself.
Membrane Gallery presents Mikel Elam. When I look at your work, I see a dream. Afro-futuristic in nature. A dream that feels like an obsession. Do you think that one day these dreams can be real?
I've been a dreamer my whole life. If I'm not dreaming at night, I'm daydreaming during the day. So there's a lot of symbols and sort of symbolic connotations to my daydreams and my night dreams. I'm always trying to analyze them both, and that is why I decided to try to put that into my work. And the Afro-Futurism part of it is that I'm, as much as I might like to look at the past, I'm more interested in where we are now, moving towards the future. And I see that in my dreams.
Do you remember a moment in your personal life where you personally felt frustrated with the state of the Black existence?
Absolutely. I think my frustration began in my teenage years. Before that, I sort of had this kind of little idealized world where I was protected by my mother, and and so I didn't really realize that there was, so many racial issues, so many issues with myself, my identity as a Black male. And so I think I had the realization around 16 when I began to read Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man and some of James Baldwin's works.
On the spectrum of the creative process, I think there are two extreme ends, right? There's the very purposeful and meticulous, and then there's the creating, and then there's the people that like to create in the flow, where creation is intuitive from the subconscious. Where do you like to create on the spectrum?
That's an excellent question. So I'm somewhere in the middle of that, and I'll explain. I generally start off with an idea. Sometimes it's just based on sketches. Sometimes it's based on something in reality that's happening, perhaps even in the news. But it evokes thoughts. And for me, those thoughts instantly turn into images. So I'll start off by doing a drawing. Then I don't work for live models anymore. There was once I did, but I now will find or put together photographs. And from those photographs, I'll create like the sort of the foundation of the work. But then as soon as that is sort of laid down, sort of, drawn in, I will throw the photograph away or put it away. And then I work intuitively.
Okay. When you were in art school, did you have a tough time with sticking with the mechanics of painting?
I didn't have a tough time, but I never became myself. And I laugh about that, and it's something that I tell people, because the whole time I spent trying to pass the grades, which everybody wants to do, and also to please the teacher.
Yeah.
And but in that process, my first degree, I basically graduated not really knowing anything about myself.
Does using mixed media with everyday objects make you feel like these dreams are more real?
So I wasn't always a mixed media artist. I mostly worked in oil, and then I moved into acrylic as I started to think about toxins, and mostly the mediums were more of a concern to me. But what I liked doing once was building up surfaces with texture and stuff. I also have to include that I was looking at certain artists that sort of evoked those things. So long before I decided to incorporate collage, I was looking at the works of, say, Romare Bearden, and some of the classical painters as well were at certain points laying in surfaces underneath, even if, just to create some sort of textural imagery or textural surfaces. So I decided at a certain point, as I grew into different mediums, I decided to start to incorporate drawings into my work, and then eventually materials.
For many years, I've sounded like a broken record because I've been emphasizing that the collective visual experience, the collective art experience, or more so visual, has become more and more flat, less textural. Right? We sit behind screens that are flat. We touch screens that are completely smooth, and a lot of the visual information we consume is on a completely smooth surface.
Yeah.
Right. Have you noticed that, or have you any thoughts about that?
I do. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to technology and evolution and all of that. I am, of course, old enough to know, pre-digital screens of any kind, pre-phones even. But I think for the newest generation, I mean, the younger generations, especially the ones born since probably 2000 or a little bit before that, are all exposed to, that's all they know is really digital. Yeah. Unless they had parents that really sort of introduced them and kept them sort of connecting to the organic.
Right.
So for myself, I'm really trying to remain an organic painter. I'm also, but I get these moments where I'm kind of intrigued with some new technology. Like recently it was AI. There are these AI apps and I've been sort of playing around with them and to see what it does with my painting. But it's only because part of it is that everyone's saying it's not going away. Right. I just haven't decided whether I want to incorporate any of that. I'm mostly against it to incorporate it into my work, but I expect to see it in works of at least the generation now.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's, there's too many forces benefiting from it being here to avoid it.
Yeah.
So why not see what we can do with it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I have a practice where I technically, when I begin a painting, I start off in quiet silence. Now, I also have a meditation practice which sort of embraces that idea of we first have to tap into ourselves before we can go into the external. Right. But then after I sort of have formulated, at least the beginning stages of the work that I'm making, then I can incorporate music. And because I then know where I'm going. Also, I don't want I have artist friends that think that music influences the work, and I agree. But for me, I think I'd like to introduce it once I know where I'm going.
Okay. Yeah. I always have to start music. It's a constant for me. Sometimes when I'm stuck, I'm like, why am I stuck? I'm like, oh, I don't hear anything. I don't hear any music to get me going. Speaking of music,
Yeah.
when you close your eyes and you remember your childhood home, what was the sonic texture of your home? What sounds and music did you always hear?
First, I can remember my mother playing Motown.
Mm.
She loved everyone from Marvin Gaye to the Supremes to the Four Tops. They were all of these different, records she would play over and over and over. That was felt very happy and joyful. And then I had an older brother. He would bring his friends over, and they'd set up a sort of a den in the basement, and he would play a wide range of music, from like rock to jazz to soul music.
Right.
But it was just a sort of like a mixture of everything. And as a result of that, my tastes for music really evolved just by listening to what the people that were older than me were playing.
Yeah, I listen to almost everything. I used to say I don't listen to country, but now I can listen to someone like Shabuzi.
Yeah.
So you're eclectic. You have a wide taste of music, right? Does any of that show up in your art or your art style?
Absolutely. So there is something called synesthesia, right? But it's not like I hear music and it turns into visuals. But there's a rhythm in my work that everyone always picks up, and they always say that it makes them feel very musical. It's not deliberate. I just think that that's just how I'm wired. I have been around a lot of music and a lot of musicians, and I think that I'm not a musician myself. I only had a couple years of piano, so I can't even count that as like anything. But I think that my sheer listening to music over and over and over, loving music, really diving in as deep as I possibly could to what the musician was trying to say, whether it was vocals or instrumental. And so as a result of that, I think I'm in tune to it with translating that into color.
Since you mentioned synesthesia,
Yeah.
Is there a frequency or sound that when you hear it, that it translates in a specific way on canvas for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's certain musicians that I'm attracted to. Maybe no one else hears it but me, but they generally will go. So that's why I like jazz. I'm going to jump back to jazz, but there's other artists that do it as well. They'll jump. The key where you think they're going is not where they're going. They end up surprising you, and they go in another direction. And I find that extraordinarily fascinating, and that's what I try to incorporate into my visual arts, is to put something of the unexpected in it.
So you mentioned AI earlier,
Yeah.
right? So is it safe to say that you're okay, your feelings about AI in its current state at least, you are okay with artists using it and it becoming a part of the fine art conversation?
That's a loaded question. Now, I have to be okay with it because change is inevitable. So I have to be okay with the idea that, so whatever I'm doing, that if it's considered interesting or not, one day, it won't be so interesting anymore. It will just fall into a category.
Right.
Out of that category comes a whole nother wave of people that will evolve out of that.
Yeah.
That's the way the whole art history is. There's one group, and then they love it, and then they hate it, and then they create something the evolution of that.
Yeah.
So in the world in general, everything comes out of the same idea of like, we were once interested in just finding a way to like light homes with electricity, and then now we're talking about things like beyond solar panels and so it's evolved,
Right.
and so in art it's the same. So I have to say, I might not understand it. So this is the thing. I don't necessarily, because of my age, I think that I try to stay current, and I try to stay in tune to what the youth are doing and talking about. But honestly, there's a point where they'll lose me. And they'll lose me because I haven't been keeping up with all of the steps in their generation.
Right.
So, but I also know, I feel proud enough to know that I can lose them too, because there are things that they missed along the way that, that I obviously experienced.
What is your relationship with the internet nowadays?
Well, okay, so I am little by little trying to step back from it as much as possible. The internet to me now has become just about consumerism. It's mostly, first we had emails, so that's a part of the internet in a way. And now all of my emails, I get no people really responding to me through emails anymore. I get mostly ads about buy this, subscribe to this, on and on and on. If you go on the internet and you say you're interested in something, even if it's something for my studio, I'm looking for a certain paint. I can't find it at the local art store. I'll Google it. Well, after that, the algorithms will start sending me paint or sending me ideas. You can buy your paint here. You can buy your paint there. It follows you wherever you go. Social media, the same thing. So I'm beginning to realize that I'm wasting too much time, actually. We once thought the internet was supposed to save us time. We once thought that it was supposed to just bring more ease. And in fact, it's just brought more sort of anxiety in a way, and it's created like a sense of separation from humanity, because you're really not communicating with anyone, seriously through the internet. I think it's important to return back to people talking to each other in person. And people interacting in person over a meal. And it's ridiculous. I could go on, but it's like when I invite my young nieces and nephews over and I find them at the table texting each other around the table. Like, come on, just talk.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff irks me.
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit. You came to the internet later in your life.
Yeah.
Right. And it was because of real life events forcing you to have a conversation.
Yes.
In recent years, what narratives or stories do you find yourself consistently putting into your work nowadays?
I'll answer this question forward and then backwards. I'll go back a little bit in time. So now, during the pandemic, I began to have this realization through all of the incidents from George Floyd on that we have not really progressed. There were all these incidents that actually seem singular and possibly just by itself. And then for some reason, there's this period of time where there's just one after another after another.
Right.
So I never wanted to actually there was a period of time where I thought if we were moving forward, I would not address those issues in my work. I would only think about the future, futuristic things. But then what happened was that I was compelled to actually express it. And I had this realization that my identity was always under attack, and that it was necessary for me to sort of tell these stories.
Right.
And sometimes you don't know, as my work is abstract enough at times that you don't really know, perhaps by the title, exactly what I'm saying. But I'm also starting to realize that lots of people are picking up on the emotional content of the work. So that's where it is now. So I was going to the School of the Visual Arts, and I was in New York, and at that time the star artist was Jean-Michel Basquiat, and there was Keith Haring and Francesco Clemente. There was a whole bunch of them, and they were a part of this whole sort of group of young artists that were getting into the galleries and making a lot of money. And I used to see Basquiat in clubs and stuff. So I lived in Tribeca, and I was a starving student. And I thought that I would just only paint in a way that kind of related to the times of, it was somewhat, like I could say that I was poor, but then I was rich in other ways, because you could be poor with a lot of other artists, and you would all go out and be poor together, be happy together. But that was sort of idealized. I didn't realize that I had sort of forgotten, because I spent summers in the South, and I remember in my teenage years actually telling people, my cousins, that they should move north, because the chances of them getting lynched down there were greater than up north. Right. I was wrong. In fact, they told me I was wrong. They said, at least we know who doesn't like us down here. Right. In the north, it's a whole nother issue. Yes, you may have better advantages in one situation, one day, and then the next day you're turned down for this and that, and you don't really know why, and not given any excuses. And then you'll find your peers, who might not be the same color, advancing. And so there was a lot of doubt. So that's when I kept staying away from the issues of myself and how I was feeling.
So you mentioned school.
Yeah.
You're coming out of school. Out of school, you're trying to figure out what to do. Myself, I did not do any art after school. I actually was a mailman for a little bit. I did a bunch of jobs like a real Jamaican.
Understood.
What jobs did you do?
Almost everything. So I didn't come from a family that could support, my habits. Even going to art school, I paid my own way through. So when I graduated my first school, I was fortunate enough to immediately get into the School of the Visual Arts, which took me to New York. Then I wasn't able to graduate because I ran out of money, and I was in a much more expensive city. So I started to take freelance jobs, and I got lucky. I worked on a couple films. I worked, like a day here or there for a photographer, for commercials, whatever I could get. Sometimes it was, a day or two working at a health food store. It was just whatever I could get. And so during that period, all of my art practice pretty much slowed down to nothing. I kept a sketchbook with me. I would draw in it sometimes, but the overwhelming feeling that I was not going to be able to afford this and to continue took me in other directions. Now, some of the things were creative. They just wasn't what I was trained in. I did work in the art department on films, and sometimes the photography stuff taught me things that I still use till today. But ultimately, I wasn't painting.
Okay. And I think that's right around the time where you were introduced to Miles Davis. How did that relationship develop?
that was what brought me back to art
Mm.
ultimately. So a young friend of mine, I mean, we were all young then, but uh, she was working to be a model. So she was from Philadelphia, but she was working out of agencies in New York. But somehow or another, she ended up going to a Miles concert, and the band sees her. She was very beautiful, so uh, probably I would say still is. And Miles basically, the band called her backstage. She meets Miles ultimately, and then he invites her to a show at the Tunnel Club.
Mm.
And because he was having his first art show. Now, I only knew Miles as a musician. I didn't know. Of course, I did know that from other entertainers that they were always doing something artistic on the side, like painting or something else. So it didn't surprise me that he was actually like trying to paint. But anyway, they were. He tells her that he's looking for an assistant to travel with him, and he tells her that he wanted someone who possibly had a passport. I happen to have had a passport because I had taken one short trip to Europe on my own. And so I went to interview with his management team. And then they took me over to meet him. And they said one of my positions, one of my um, job assignments would be to keep him in paints and canvas. So I met him, and he was sitting there when I met him in his home with a sketchbook in his hand, and I walk in, and he doesn't say anything to me. He just passes me the sketchbook and says, "What do you think of that?" So I mean, what was I supposed to say? I just said, "Yeah, it looks good." And then he said, "We're going to do a lot of shopping in Europe, so get ready." So I was like, "Okay," and that was it. So I found myself on a plane to Europe the next day.
Mm.
So anyway, that's how we started. So Miles was painting every day in his whatever hotel room we were in. There was canvas set up. There was paints everywhere, and after his engagements, I would set up the canvas on the floor and paints all around. And he was just like a little kid. He would just start painting,
Mm.
and he would tell me stories. And it was a lot going on in his life. He was writing his autobiography,
Mm.
and he had he had a not a ghostwriter, but a co-writer. But the co-writer could not he was so popular and traveling all the time. The co-writer, who lived in New York,
Mm.
wasn't able to follow him everywhere. So he would give me a little sort of microphone and a list of questions. And so I heard great stories about his life, from with every major person in the music industry and in other parts of the arts. But he was painting the whole time. So finally, he says to me, "When are you going to, after months and months of like sort of setting him up, when are you going to start painting with me?"
Mm.
And I was like, "No, no, I'm not ready for that." And he said, "Why?" And I was like, "Because I'm too busy doing all of your other things. I can't focus on that." And his exact words was, he'd look at me with these sort of piercing eyes, and he would say, "No excuses." So finally, I eventually started to paint with him. And there is a story that really sort of defined my returning to feeling like an artist again.
Yeah, how did that come about?
We're in Malibu and we're getting ready to head to Japan. And we're at his Malibu house as opposed to just being in a hotel room because he had a house there. But he was mostly a New Yorker. So he lived in New York most of the time. So he says to me, we're in this big house on the beach, total glass on the back windows. All you hear is the ocean. And he's bored to tears. He's watching television, but he has a canvas set up on a glass table, and he says to me, I'm going to bed. Why don't you work on that canvas? Now, I'm wide awake. Rarely was wide awake because I had to work so many hours, getting up before him, going to bed after him. And but I was wide awake, and I decided, you know what? He might not like what I do, but he did say I should paint with him, so I did. So I painted, and I got really into it, and I found myself, I would say he went to bed at around 11. I discovered it was 5 a.m. and I had been painting that long and not even thinking about it. So now I'm panicked because he's going to get up soon and I'm going to be dead tired. So I run to my room and kind of go to sleep. When I wake up, I realize it's 11:30 in the morning, and I'm now thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to be really like angry with me. So I came down the steps, and I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I overslept. And he just looked up at me with those same piercing eyes, and he said, I like what you did last night. And I said, you do? And then the conversation was around this painting. So fast forward, I felt comfortable to start painting with him on a regular basis. And eventually what happened was he was preparing for a show. His partner at the time was this woman named Jo Gelbard, and they were like the ones that were, they had even sort of rented a studio in New York. Right. And they were seriously painting together. And I had not seen much of what they had done. Yeah. So a little bit further beyond that, he's having a show at a New York Soho gallery. And we arrive at the show to, the usual paparazzi waiting outside. And we walk in, and here are the two paintings that me and him did together. And I'm shocked, and I just said, oh my gosh, he thought they were good enough to be in the show. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, wow.
And so then, the whole typical thing, it's a crowded, mad scene, and then finally we leave and we get back in the car. And he leans over to me with a smile, with his glasses, his eyes over his glasses, and he says, what do you think of your two paintings in the show? And I was totally surprised and amazed. And then he said, well, if they sell, you're going to get half the money. Wow. And I said, really? And then he said, yeah. And then, ironically enough, those two paintings were the only two that sold. And I got half the money, and from that moment on, I took the money and invested in a bunch of art supplies. So,
that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long were you? I'm sure you. Number one, I'm sure you're really grateful for that, right? Him being a catalyst to get you back into your own artistry. How long were you his assistant?
5 years.
5 years.
Until his passing.
Can you tell us about those last days?
We were on a heavy schedule as usual. The whole 5 years was traveling the world. And, you might get a few weeks off here or there, but you're just constantly going. And there were even films being made in the midst of all of that. So you can imagine it was a pretty heavy schedule. His health was not always good. Mostly because he didn't take care of himself. And but he was a diabetic, and he had issues from time to time with his lungs, where he might get a little spot of pneumonia, and then he has to go in the hospital overnight or something. So anyway, we finished the summer tour at the Hollywood Bowl, which ends up in California. And by that time I had moved to California. I was now living in California, and I could live anywhere because when it came to working with him, they would just fly me to wherever I needed to be. So he, after the Hollywood Bowl, he said to me, I was like, well, you know, do you want me to ride with you back to Malibu? And he looked at me and he said, no, you live in California now. I'll go to I can get home. And then he said, but order me some art supplies and have them delivered. And so I did. And Miles is a person that, you know, if he likes you, he'll be calling you a lot, even if it's to talk for 30 seconds. And so I noticed that he hadn't called me, and I kept wondering, like, okay, that's curious. It's 3 days now. I haven't heard from him. So I found out that he had checked into a hospital because he had another little bout. Nothing serious. It's happened before. Mm-hmm. And so I called him at the hospital, and he said he always knew where all the food was, all throughout everywhere. In New York, in California, the same thing. So I lived in Hollywood, and he said, well, there's this great fish place near you. Bring me some fish, you know. Mm-hmm. So I went and got him fish, and then I drove over to the hospital. And he was sitting in a chair just like I am now, and we were talking. But he started to say to me things about how proud he was of me, and that how much I had grown, that I had become, like he said, you were a kid when you came in, and you're kind of like, you're more mature now. And I was like, yeah. And then I remembered saying to him as I was leaving, I said, I'll be back tomorrow. And I said, thank you for everything. We're going to continue to do paintings when you get out of here.
Right.
And then he sort of said, yeah. And then he said, well, call me before you come. I might be sleeping. And I thought about that when I left, because it was never like that. I could just show up. Right. And then I thought about it, and I was like, just something that was very curious. Well, he went into a stroke. He had a stroke that evening, and he went into a coma. And the coma, he never came out of it. And he was in a coma for about a month, right. About 3.5 weeks. So I never got to say anything more to him other than I was at the hospital every day with his family for the 3.5 weeks, right, until his passing.
Wow. That's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that was a real relationship. It wasn't just your boss.
No.
You know?
No, it had left the boss thing probably in the first 6 months. He was like my father on Monday, and like my bad older brother on Tuesday. Like it was just one thing after another. But he was family. Right. And I'm still in touch, weekly with his family. Mm-hmm. They always say they consider me one of the family.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So. How was that after he passed?
Yeah.
Did any of that grief affect your art?
Yes. My work became much more emotional. Some might describe it as, I think it got better, but I actually think some people were saying, it seems darker now. Mm. And I made a lot of portraits of him during that period of time. Right. I didn't think I was working out darkness. Mm-hmm. Part of it was when Miles passed, I was actually almost ready to not travel anymore. That's why I moved to Los Angeles. I had friends. I realized that I had friends everywhere, that I wasn't actually living my life. Right. I was living in his world. Yeah. And so when I would have like 6 weeks or 7 weeks off, I started not wanting to go back on the road, because I would hang out with my friends and all of that. So it was almost that time anyway. Yeah. But I missed him so much being in my life. Mm-hmm. However, I do believe in a certain spirit of an energy in people, and sometimes I think he's still around. So, yeah.
connect with that.
Yeah.
I'm spiritual myself, so
Yeah.
um, I I think when people pass, especially when you have a real relationship with them, they've imbued a part of themselves with you. They've connected
Yeah.
to you,
Yeah.
even when they're not with us anymore. Is it any harder to listen to his music nowadays?
No, it's actually better,
Mm.
or not the same.
Explain.
Um, I'm older. I'm more mature now. So I came into Miles. So this is the complexities of Miles. Miles, uh, they said he's probably changed music 4 to 5 times in his life
Mm.
in terms of the direction of the whole music culture.
Right.
So I only came in at the very end of his life,
Mm-hmm.
and I had missed at least four of those, probably four changes.
Right.
In my teenage years, I came into the jazz, the electric fusion period of Miles. That was when Miles decided that rock musicians were making too much music and making too much money, and he was a better musician. So he started to sort of make these sort of hybrid jazz sounds of albums, which were very successful.
Yeah.
So I came in then because I think that at my young age, that was my entry point into what was jazz.
Right.
It was easy accessible to me.
Mm.
But since his passing, I've gone backwards into the deep past, and I've now learned so much more beyond. Also, I think he was teaching me all along, but I only heard it. You know, it's funny, like a painting. You can look at a painting on Monday and you'll see one thing, and then if it's a good painting, you'll see something different on Friday.
Right.
And so that's how it is. I'm now combining my own maturity with now listening to certain things he said to me, and they're all resonant. So it's like he's speaking to me again through his music.
When someone looks at your work, what thought or emotion do you want them to walk away with?
I want them to walk away with the idea that we as a culture are on the rise.
That's good.
That we're powerful, that there should be no doubt that we are leaders, and that we have it all. We have it all, and that's so I'm very proud about putting melanin-based images into my work, because I want this generation and future generations to be able to see themselves and to see that we fit into a contemporary narrative, we fit into a classical narrative, we fit into all the narratives that were created by other people in the world.
Yeah, we deserve to take space, hold space.
Exactly. We deserve a seat at the table.
Are there any mantras or stories that you know you're going to either say in your art or say with your voice until you're no longer on this earth?
So my mantra, and I have to remind myself too, because I'm human, and then things can happen in the external world that can send a confusing moment to you. But I have to remind myself, it ties into what I just said about in my paintings, I have to remind myself that I am worthy, and that I am good enough, and that I am deserving of it. It took me years to be able to work out that. I mean, I'm only just getting to it at this point in my life. Now, it happens differently for different people. Some people get it earlier. And I can analyze myself, enough to say I've had therapy, I've self-examined myself, and I could see that I can, the message that I want to take forward and to um, you know, to everybody beyond my time is to never doubt yourself.
Right.
Just do it.
So